Welcome to Free to Speak, the New Zealand Free Speech Union podcast. If you enjoy the show, subscribe for uncensored conversations and free speech news from New Zealand and beyond.
Kia ora and welcome to Free to Speak, the official podcast of the New Zealand Free Speech Union. I'm your host, Dane, a council member of the Free Speech Union, and joining us today is Bob McCoskrie. Bob of Family First.
Dane, good to be with you, and congratulations on pronouncing the surname correct. I never expect it to be correct, so people can't spell it, people can't say it, so I just get used to it.
But
so
you
well
do
done.
Thank you. You do have R's in some strange places, but it's like if I ever do a interview with someone named Brian, I'll always kick off by asking, how many times are you referred to as brain in emails?
Yeah.
And because it's invariably a lot. No, but that's great. Well, no one can pronounce my name, obviously, because it's got the D at the end. Actually, there's two pronunciations for my name. Can you say it?
Well, I think I used to call you Gerard, and then I realized it was Giroux. So, mea culpa as well.
Yeah, well, Giroux would be the anglicized way to say it. Then you've got Giroux. Then you've got Garau,
okay.
which is the original Occitan. So it's all a little wild. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm a man of many names and many masks and faces.
Oh, I think probably both of us have been called a lot of names, and probably some of them we don't want to.
No, that's right. Well, like I noticed it. You were called far right the other day. I get called far right and a communist. I mean, it's all a bit confused. But you're from South Auckland, like me.
Yep, born and bred Papatoetoe, and through all the schools there, and now I live in Manarewa, but from the south side. So yeah, very proud south side boy.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so you would have gone to the Starlight Picture Theatre when you were a young fella.
Oh boy, now you're talking, and then down to little Abner's at Hunter's Corner, and yeah,
which is still around, isn't it?
I actually set up a youth centre directly opposite Little Abner's. Wow. And people thought that it was just so that I could go from my office straight across to get the beautiful salted chicken flavoured chips at the takeaway to Little Abner's. Right. It's an institution.
Yeah. Or Papatui, last time I was there, I mean, there's so much fantastic South Asian cuisine now. It's just it's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, multi-ethnicity for sure. It's full on.
It's a great place. South Auckland. It's amazing. Like I notice in East Tamaki there now, there's a whole new subdivision that never existed when I was a kid. It's like there's a mall there, right there, isn't there? It's quite incredible.
It's around the Flatbush area that I think has really taken off. It's just, houses everywhere, whole cities, townships, and like you say, movie theaters. And, when you're really sort of got a urban area all to itself, when you get your own movie theater, that's kind of the benchmark.
Well, at the Starlight, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark plus double feature Jaws on the same night.
Well, my memory is the Titanic, and what year was the Titanic? That's my memory of the Starlight Picture Theatre in Papatoetoe going to watch, and we all just went mainly to see the ship get bowled by the massive tidal wave. I don't know what year that was.
Iceberg.
Yeah. I'm just going to look that up because that's memory.
I saw Beverly Hills Cop and all sorts of things there.
1997.
Oh wow! Well, that's late in the day for me, but yeah.
Oh, hang on, no, that's Titanic. Sorry, wrong movie. Poseidon Adventure.
The Poseidon Adventure. Oh, Gene Hackman. Well, was
1972. I was only what was I? I was 9.
Wow. Wow, the Poseidon Adventure at the Starlight.
Yeah.
Papatui.
Yeah.
That's a good Christian character, isn't it? Gene Hackman's pastor, who's leading them through the.
Yeah.
Well, this is becoming a film podcast, so we're going to move on. But, fantastic, Bob. So, okay, now this is a gear change for you people. We're going to be talking about the Conversion Practices Prohibition Legislation Act 2022, passed by the last Labour government. Now, this is something I want to talk about for a while, and Bob's the perfect person to talk to about it. It's the kind of bill where it's a little bit like abortion, where as soon as you voice any sort of opposition, people are going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. You're going to be this nasty, terrible character that doesn't care about people and all this kind of stuff. But it was pretty clear to me that there were some religious freedom issues in this. And we had an obligation to push against it. We did submit. We didn't have a heavy campaign against it. I remain concerned. So let's go back to the start and just tell us basically, Bob, I've got notes here I'll be referring to. So maybe just the history of the bill as you know it, who brought it forward and what did it seek to really achieve?
Well, it was brought forward by the Labour Party, and at the time the Minister of Justice was Chris Farfoy. It was always a desire, I think, of Labour to see a conversion therapy bill. In fact, I think the Green Party were also involved. They did a petition as well. Elizabeth Kerekere, who of course is no longer in Parliament, was pushing for it as well. And look, in our view, it was a solution looking for a problem. If they were talking about coercive and abusive counselling involving electric shock treatment and anti-gay boot camps and that type of pressure, everybody was opposed to that, and it was hard to find. In fact, we did an official Information Act request to the Human Rights Commission saying, had they had a complaint about conversion therapy happening to a person, because if it's a human right, that's where you would go to make your complaint, especially if there's no law. You couldn't go to the police, so you would go to the Human Rights Commission. They had had one informal complaint in 10 years leading up to the bill. So this wasn't a problem that needed to be urgently addressed. This was more about ramming down an ideology. And that's what the bill was used. It was simply used to push an ideology that if you encourage people to live naturally in their biological sex, and if they want to align their sexuality with whatever teaching they align themselves with, so personal autonomy, then that should be illegal. But if you want to encourage people to, for example, change their sex or identify as one of more than 200 plus sexualities that are available, then that should be encouraged. So I always say conversion therapy hasn't been banned. It's just conversion therapy in a certain direction has been criminalised, and it's a shocking law. It needs to be overturned, and I'm sure we're going to get into the detail. And I've got a very good reason why the law should be scrapped immediately.
Okay, well, that's quite a teaser. So that's going to be because I'm looking forward to that. So my understanding is that reading through the documents that you gave me and other documents, that a massive issue here for religious freedoms, because I'll stay to the religious freedoms and the free speech aspect of it as much as I can here. It's really broadly defined. I mean, is that fair to say? I think Labour would probably push back and say, no, the bar is quite high, but we can't, it is still feasible that prayer can be pulled up in this, can't it?
Even altar calls. The Human Rights Commission were going around telling groups that even an altar call could amount to conversion therapy. Look, when the debate was going through, Chris Farfoy was on News Talk ZB, and the interviewer, I think it was Heather Duplessis-Allen, said, so if a parent, for example, says to a child who may be prepubescent, I want to go on hormone blockers, can a parent say, no, you can't? And the Minister of Justice, Chris Farfoy, said, well, no, that's not acceptable. A parent can't say that. So that was just a red flag of just how far this was going to go.
Sorry, Bob. Is that in the actual law though, or is it just Chris Farfoy, who wasn't a terribly effective spokesperson for any of this censorship stuff? Like he
could be both.
He sort of mangled. He did mangle it a bit. Poor
he
man.
did, but the problem is that the definition of conversion therapy is very loose. I mean, let me just give you an example. In the actual act, section, it talks about serious harm. So it's an offence to perform conversion practice that causes serious harm. So immediately you say to yourself, oh, what's serious harm? So you go back to the definitions. Serious harm means any physical, psychological, or emotional harm that seriously affects the health, safety, or welfare of the individual. So they've used the word serious in the actual answer or the definition of the title, which of course to me is a no-no. So it's not defined. We don't know what serious means. And is it serious harm to say to a young child, look, honey, I know you want to be a boy, but I'm not going to approve you going on puberty blockers. Wait until you grow up, make a decision as an adult. I mean, that's one of the interesting things. In Section 8 of the Act, it says that it's an offence to perform conversion therapy on a person under the age of 18 or lacking decision-making capacity. There's an admission there that under 18-year-olds lack decision-making capacity. And yet who is being railroaded into chemicalization, personal pronouns, identifying as the opposite sex, even though they apparently lack decision-making capacity? So there's all these contradictions throughout the Act. And like I say, they just don't
real
define
asymmetry there, isn't there?
Yeah, they don't define conversion therapy. Conversion therapy, in their eyes, is basically not affirming LGBTQIA plus whatever. It's not affirming that you have 120 plus genders to choose from or 200 plus sexualities. You may be saying, I'm making up those figures. No, I've seen evidence of that exact message being pushed in New Zealand schools. So kids are receiving that message to go in that direction, to affirm. And if you oppose that, conversion therapy immediately, and it's been criminalized. So it's the chilling effect.
Well, Georgina Bayer opposed that.
Yeah.
Georgina Bayer would say to me, this is not a decision a child can make.
Speaking of Hunter's Corner, actually sorry, Dane, totally sidestep here, but speaking of Georgina Bayer, and because we've just talked about Hunter's Corner and Papatoetoe, Georgina Bayer also, who ushered through the decriminalisation of prostitution, admitted that the problem of street prostitution, it should have been banned. Hunter's Corner has always had a major problem, as has South Mall and Manarewa, with street prostitution. So there was this turning around. There was this realisation that actually inherently prostitution harms. And so, yeah, just when you mentioned Georgina Bayer, but that was the interesting thing about the whole conversion therapy debate. We found that we were linking arms with groups that did not want people affirm that they could change their sex, the gender critical groups. And so, yeah, that was sort of an interesting aspect of this whole debate.
Because a lot of them wouldn't be that sympathetic to Christian causes necessarily.
No, and I don't think what definitely wasn't purely religious opposition. Well, I mean, you could argue that there was Muslims opposed to it as well. There are other faiths, but there were people who simply wanted the ability. I mean, I think one of the most amazing aspects of this law change was the fact that there's a provision within it that talks about consent. And it says that even if an adult consents to wanting counselling to deal with unwanted sexuality issues and gender confusion, even if they consent to it, that does not protect the counsellor or the medical professional or the parent or the pastor. I
thought it was more of a child's bill, though, isn't it, for under 18s? Or is this, if it happened when you were younger, you can...
No, so Section 10, it is not a defence that the individual on whom the conversion practice was performed consented to the performance of that practice, or the person charged believed that such consent was given. So, you know, even if you say, look, I don't want to perform conversion therapy on you, whatever you think that means, but hey, I want to help you realize your goals in terms of your sexuality and your gender confusion, that still means that they are committing a criminal offence under this Act. And what amazes me most, Dane, is that the ACT Party, as a party, supported this law, even with that provision. They should have tossed this law out and said, go and work on it and fix it, purely on that provision, because it's taking away autonomy. These groups argue for autonomy and freedom of choice, but not on this issue, apparently.
But the consent thing, so if this was in a religious context and you were a religious person who wanted to discuss and maybe potentially change your sexuality, whether you can or not, I'm not saying you can or you can't or anything. I've got no opinion on whether these things work or don't work. I'm not coming to, well, I have my own views, but I'm not bringing that to this interview, you know. But if you would be consenting as someone who was following a faith and believed that there was utility in speaking to your imam or rabbi or pastor. So because of that, the consent thing should hold, because you were doing it as a person with strongly held beliefs, at least at the time.
Yeah. And
going
so
to someone else who shared your beliefs.
And the advice was that it breached the Bill of Rights for that exact reason, but it just didn't hold. The agenda, the desire to get this law across the line outweighed any concerns around that. And look, there were attempts to sort of make the bill a bit more normal. So yeah, maybe deal with those extremities of electric shock treatment and ice baths and all that type of stuff. And so there was a number of amendments. I just looked them up actually before we came on air, and like there was amendments. These were all voted down by politicians to allow conversations between a child and a parent, that those shouldn't be illegal. They voted against that. They voted against the expression of any opinion. So even you expressing your opinion could be deemed to be, you know, like if I came to you and says, Dane, could I change my sex? I want to identify as a woman. And you said, well, Bob, sorry, you're going to make a very ugly woman. You know, over a period of time, that could become deemed to be conversion therapy, especially if I go whining off to the Human Rights Commission, who have spent $2 million looking for complaints. They're desperate to find a complaint, right? Another one, parental consent for treatment of gender transitioning should be required. They voted against that. So in other words, they took away the involvement of parents to give the final say. A health practitioner should be able to speak freely about treatment options. That's a massive issue, because you've got medical professionals now. What they say is that, yes, they can give their opinion, but it has to be reasonable. And actually the law says that it has to align with, in terms of reasonableness, it has to align with the professional groups. Now, as we know, the professional groups have been captured by PATHA. The Ministry of Health has been captured by this. You know, they're still arguing about whether we should chemicalize kids who apparently lack decision-making capacity with puberty blockers.
They're not neutral. A lot of this stuff is very driven by the fashionable politics of the day.
Just one other amendment was PREA.
Yes.
PREA for unwanted sexuality and gender issues. The SOP, the amendment was that should not be illegal. So if you ask for PREA for unwanted sexuality and gender issues, that, you know, it should be quite clear that is not illegal. They voted against that. So PREA could be, because what you do is, it may not be deemed to be conversion therapy at the time, but what you generally find is that people go away and then they get annoyed and they think, oh, gee, I think I was subject to conversion therapy. I'm going to go and make a complaint. And that's the chilling effect. And counsellors contact me and they say, when am I entering into conversion therapy? If I ask them for permission to just talk to them, to pray for them, I say, well, theoretically, they are consenting, but the problem with the law is consent will not be your defence. And even if you pray for them, as aligned with what they want prayer for, you know, they want prayer for their gender confusion, that could still be deemed to be conversion therapy. It is so vague, and because it's not actually about enforcing a clear line in the sand on what is criminal and what is not criminal. It's about enforcing an ideology, ramming down the ideology that, yes, you can change your sex, you can identify as all these sexualities, don't you dare try to stop me.
Reading this, I found something similar in the prohibition of protests outside abortion clinics.
Safe zones, yeah.
The safe zones, And I presented the submission on that. And what I found interesting about it is, to me, we had harassment laws. If someone was really in someone's face, there was a way to deal with that individual, right? Now, you could argue that having seeing people with placards, even if they're silent, outside a clinic is going to upset some people, sure. But we should have the ability to be able to persuade others.
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
Now, 50 women may go into that clinic. If one of them sees someone praying silently and decides, I'm not going to do this, that to me is an outcome that should not be legally prohibited. As a society, we should have the right to be able to engage with people and say, we think what you're doing is wrong. Have you considered this?
Yeah, I mean, let me give you an example of a contradiction to show just how contradictory this whole thing is. You have a young girl who thinks she's fat, and so she starts starving herself. She starts vomiting. She basically has anorexia nervosa. She gets incredibly thin. Basically, her mind says to herself, "You are fat. You need to lose weight." She looks in the mirror. She's stick thin. She's starving herself. She's actually making herself ill, and yet she thinks what she thinks is different to the factual physicality of her body. How do we deal with that? If she turns up, do we say, well, yeah, no, you are right. We need to book you in for a liposuction. Here's some weight loss tablets, and do we affirm that, or do we heal the mind? Do we deal with the presenting problem? Now, imagine if we created a law that criminalized parents against getting counseling help and, affirming their daughter and not going along with the daughter's wishes to have the liposuction and to take the weight loss pills and, to enable her to vomit whenever she has food. Imagine if we did that, it would be heartless. And yet we don't do that. We heal the mind. We don't harm the body. Now, in this whole gender confusion issue, especially with children, we, rather than healing the mind, we cut the body. And we've gone to the point with this conversion therapy law where if you try to encourage healing the mind, you are actually criminalized, because in the law, it actually says, under the meaning of conversion therapy practice, it's section 5, if anybody's got it nearby, it says, conversion practice does not include assisting an individual to express their gender identity, assisting an individual who's undergoing or considering undergoing a gender transition. That is not conversion therapy. So you can see it's only criminalizing in one direction. It's a direction they don't like, but it's a direction that says, firstly, that we can affirm somebody in their biological sex, and secondly, we can affirm somebody making a decision on their own autonomy as to the values they want to align with, whether those are religious, non-religious. I mean, even non-religious people have gender confusion and want to detransition. So, don't want to go down that path, and understand that, yeah, they're just quirky as male and female. There are some dudes who like ballet, and there are some women who like playing rugby, and that's great. You don't need to change your sex to accommodate that.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of strikes me thinking about it that this, in a way, is a religious bill. The way Georgina Bai would have understood her condition would be very different from the way that people understand it now. She would have called it dysphoria. A lot of people still use that word, but they fundamentally believe that gender is a construct anyway. Now, this is not scientific. It sort of comes from the Judith Butler idea, which is just basically a batty academic theory. So there is a religious element here, and that a prophet has said some stuff, and people have transitioned what was considered a medical condition, and saying, no, it's a social condition. It's a condition of conditioning.
Yeah, look, I just think that it is enforcing an ideology down, and for young people that are confused, it's interesting that the legislation talks about the fact that under 18s lack decision making capacity. We completely agree with that, but it is criminalising. And I think the most concerning part of the law for us was that it was criminalising parents who affirmed their daughter as a girl, who affirmed their son as a boy. Look, there can be a lot of disagreement within families, but to actually criminalise that action when you're doing that affirmation, I think was, completely unacceptable. And, they tried to soften the effects of the bill, the radical nature of it, by allowing prayer, by allowing parents to speak freely, by allowing medical professionals who may disagree with the professional body that was pushing down the gender affirmation. I mean, you've now got, for example, I don't know, you're probably aware of Dr. Andrew Amos and Dr. Gillian Spencer in Queensland. Both of them have been stood down from senior positions because they won't affirm the chemicalization castration model for gender confused kids. The evidence that they see, which I think backs up why this bill should be overturned, is the fact that present with a lot of kids that suffer with gender identity disorder is comorbid disorders, things like autism, things like trauma in their young life. There's other presenting issues, and what they've found is that when you deal with those other issues, then you actually deal with the gender confusion. And anecdotally, I've spoken to detransitioners who have gone through that. Look, I was just looking up some of the more recent research around, and it was the Finnish study. And the Finnish study found that, so this was a study a new study published showed that those who underwent gender surgery had a suicide risk 12 times higher than those who did not go through gender surgery. It was 56 healthcare organizations, 90 million patients, and they said gender affirming surgery is significantly associated with elevated suicide attempt risks. Now, there's a whole lot of research that backs up those findings around the world. And this is the basis of our argument, that we should heal the mind rather than cut the body. But this law criminalizes anybody who goes down the counselling route, and even criminalizes counsellors for suggesting, actually, no, I don't think you should go on puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. I don't think you should have a mastectomy or, castrate healthy parts of the body to try and identify as the opposite sex. A medical professional is at risk of conversion therapy for that, and liable up to 5 years in prison. A parent is liable up to 5 years in prison if a child argues that the parent has done serious harm, which, by the way, they haven't defined what serious harm is.
Well, actually, I want to go back to harm, because, and just working off what you've just been saying, harm is very hard to define. Some of the stats that you're talking about, which I've actually read too, around suicide rates of people that have transitioned. Now, that says to me that there is deeper trauma or other trauma. Now, someone who approaches their imam may be dealing with depression first anyway, before they even go there. Whether they leave the session, I mean, how would you establish any causation there? There could be all sorts of other things that have happened in their lives that have driven them to that point. It's hard to lay it at the feet of that session.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I've interviewed a couple of detransitioners, Chloe Cole in the United States. We had her speak at our conference a couple of years ago, but I also spoke to her a couple of years before that when she was 18. We've had two detransitioners in New Zealand, Zara and Nissi, that we have profiled. And the messaging is common amongst all the detransitioners' testimonies that I read, is that their mental health was suffering while they were going through this desire to change their sex. But even as they affirmed a change in sex and started that progression, they still had mental health issues, because the mental health issues weren't being dealt with. And in fact, what they say is that once they decided to park the whole transitioning and deal with the mental health issues, the desire to change their sex suddenly disappeared as well. And this is what many of the medical experts have said: don't cut the body, heal the mind. And but this law, the conversion therapy law, criminalizes attempts to get counseling over the wishes, the desires of the person. But, as we've already identified, Dane, if you wish to go down the track of transitioning, full support of the state. If you decide that you don't want to go down the path of transitioning and someone helps you, that someone is criminalized. That's wrong.
Yeah, criminalized or at least stigmatized and all sorts of things. So back to harm. Now, do you, I'd be interested to know, I'm just going to change topic a little. Where do you sit on the under 16 potential ban there? Because
From social media?
A social media ban,
yeah.
sorry, yeah. So what I've learned being a part of the Free Speech Union for quite a while now, a few years now, is that when you actually get into evidence and proof for hate speech laws, the effectiveness of them, even the impact of violent video games, all that kind of stuff, science can't really give you too much there. And it's interesting as to why that would be. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but it's like these are so specific to the individual, how we interact with material.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the under 16 social media ban? I'm wondering, like in the Christian community, which you're, aligned with and have connections with, is there some support there? Like, I'd imagine there could be, but am I right or wrong on that?
Oh, look, there's debate both ways. There's groups that I know that are totally opposed to the ban, and there's groups that support it. Where we have landed at Family First is to say, look, there's definitely a problem. Social media has been unregulated. Big tech, we call it. It's been a little bit like big tobacco. Big tobacco spent a whole lot of time persuading everybody that they weren't going to target kids, that their product wasn't addictive. It was big smoke screens. They got all these people to endorse the product. Even doctors were recommending which cigarette to smoke. And then suddenly the research came out and found out that, no, it is addictive. No, they have been targeting kids. And we called big tobacco to account. It was one of the arguments we made during the Say No to Dope campaign, against legalizing weed. It was the same thing. Big marijuana does not respect families or kids. They want to addict people because then they've got a client for life. And, we said that that was going to be harmful to our communities. When it comes to social media, the problem I have is that, look, of course, there's positives to social media. A lot of us do love aspects of it. But big tech, we've realized through recent research and admissions that big tech knew that they were addicting kids. When they found out, Meta admitted that when they found out that they were addicting kids on social media with the algorithms, and when they found out that the material they were pushing through, the suicide ideation, the body image, the cyberbullying, when they weren't taking control over that, that was harming kids. They knew that, and they buried the research and they stopped it. That actually came out in the Los Angeles case recently, where Meta lost that case. So our argument is, look, we need to hold big tech to account, and we need to put the liability back on them. I don't want the government monitoring any of us. I don't want that, government-backed digital ID any more than anybody else does. But I do think, in the same way that we protect kids, that we have restrictions on age for drinking, for entering into contracts, for getting licenses, a whole lot of things. We understand that kids' brains are still developing, and there are certain things that will not be good for them. So as a society, and that doesn't stop kids. I'm sure there's kids under the age of, what is the age for driver's license? 15 or 16, I think it is.
16, I think, yeah.
I bet there's some 13-year-olds today who are driving tractors, motorbikes, and driving vehicles, right? It still happens. But as a society, we've said, look, ideally, we want licenses for this age because that's when we think a child is mature enough to handle it. The argument with social media is that because of the content, the algorithms, and the dirty tactics of big tech, we need some protections in place for children. I think we can do it without the big hand of government, simply by putting liability back on big tech. And look, watch United States at the moment, because the Supreme Court, just, was it last week or beginning of this week, decided that actually Meta had to face up to these allegations that the Supreme Court didn't back them or protect them in any way. So there's going to be all these lawsuits. I think it was a Vermont case where the Attorney General was going after Meta, and the Supreme Court said, no, Vermont, you can go after Meta for what you're claiming. So that's going to be a big account. That's kind of big tech's big tobacco moment, in my view. And so do I want to ban in New Zealand? I think there's argument for it. Ultimately, I just want children to be protected from some of the stuff that they've been exposed to. I think we should watch Australia just a little bit more, because I think they're the kind of laboratory test, aren't they?
And kids are getting around it, which they will. Kids are very, very clever when it comes to dodging censorship.
Oh, well, kids are drinking alcohol. Kids are driving vehicles. Kids are probably entering into contracts as well. You know, it's never going to be perfect. They're going to be entering R18 porn sites as well, unfortunately. But
I mean, if we can be specific about, if we could be sort of targeted there, that would work for me. I mean, where I'd push back on comparing it to driver's licenses, that's a very specific, or alcohol. That's a very specific harm. Which we know is going to damage their body, impair them, all that kind of stuff. The internet is so large.
And so much part of our life now.
And so much part of our life and professional lives.
Yeah.
It's literally like walking out the front door into the world and just engaging with the entire world in your street. You know, it's like that. So,
which is why I'd like to tell Big Tech, look, if we prove that you are deliberately targeting under 16-year-olds with objectionable material, because we know they have the power to stop that stuff.
Yeah, the algorithms make sense to me. That makes sense to me. They still need to know they were kids. So we still get into that digital ID territory a little bit. So I don't know how that would be.
Well, I think they've already got 90 data points on you already, Dane. And if we start talking about the fact that I'd really like a holiday on Waikiki Beach now, I can guarantee within half an hour my feed is going to be filled with ads for Hawaii.
I found that. It disturbs the hell out of me. It disturbs the hell out of me. Like, I was speaking to Peter Boghossian about, and he was saying, the backlash to the censorship era we've come out of. And he said there's this guy that walks around just using the N-word at black people he confronts. And he said, this is, and I said, oh, well, that's a real pity. And he goes, oh, well, it's a necessary backlash. It was always going to happen. People were going to go that far with this newfound freedom. And I'm like, oh no. And so, it's like watching a car crash or something. I looked at one of his clips just to see if the guy was real. And I was like, oh my God, how offensive is that? And then I was flooded with this guy for the next 2 days. I just had to sort of, no. So, you go to one thing.
Yeah.
It'll just bombard you. I mean, you just look at one clip, it'll bombard you. It'll go, oh, he likes that. It's like, no, I don't like that. I'm looking at it because I'm just, I wanted to know, is this guy for real? It's just, it's
but
crazy.
I just think big tech has been unaccountable. It's been the Wild West, and they have deliberately exploited their freedom. They have targeted kids with algorithms. They have not, stopped objectionable material. I think, to be honest, Dane, I actually do think that big tech knows most of their audience. They may not get it 100% right, but the fact that just before the ban in Australia in December last year, the fact that they went around and they were blocking accounts of 16 and under. Now that, they didn't get it perfectly right, did they? But they still had measures to know whether they will. For Family First, we've actually promoted a App Store accountability, which has been very successful and has been used in Florida and some other states. It is being challenged, but the App Store accountability means that, and it puts the power back in the hands of the parents. When a child goes to sign up for an app like Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, they have to do it through their Apple or Google account, and it's linked to the parent. So the parent is kind of the guardrail for whether the child gets on it in the first place. That means that the parent doesn't have to prove their age. It's just that it's a family linked account. We just think that that's a better guardrail.
I do too. And those tools have always been there. And it's interesting that National isn't sort of talking about that or promoting that. But
we've
I think
floated it past them.
Well, yeah, I think this is a bit cynical for them. That they're a little bit beleaguered as a party, and they think that this is an easy one. maybe, that there'll be enough parents in the middle that will sympathize and give them an easy win. So I mean, there's always a risk too that if kids can't go on certain sites, it'll drive them to even darker ones, because a lot of these other sites will say, well, let's put a chat feature. If we have a chat feature, we'll probably get 3 or 4 months of all the kids coming to us before we get shut down. So at least we knew where they were. Now they could be migrating to all these other dodgier sites. But the other thing
I think a site, sorry, Dane, I think a site with suicide ideation and body shaming and cyberbullying that's allowing that to come through, that's already a dark site. So I'm not sure they can go to a darker site. But you're right, the alternatives will spring up.
I think there are darker sites. There would be darker sites out there. But the other thing I just wanted to say is, and this is where I do get a bit concerned. Substack in Australia is banned, right? So because you can have comments, right? So that they ban that. Now, all children are individuals. A 14-year-old future head girl on Substack reading David Attenborough blogs or that she'll be banned from doing that. So, and that's what really concerns me. There's a hell of a lot of knowledge online. We're all getting smarter because of the internet. There's a lot of doom and gloom, and there are issues that need to be looked into. But I think a lot of our kids are actually getting a hell of a lot smarter. They're actually getting ahead of their teachers in many ways. Like one of my sons, the 17-year-old, when he was about 8 or 9, he was watching a lot of David Attenborough and people like that on YouTube. Whenever we went out for meals, he'd sort of want to join the adult conversation, and he'd say, "Did you know sharks?" And he'd actually have people quite fascinated. They'd be like, "I never knew that, but tell me more." He was absorbing so much good knowledge from the internet. I do have a concern that bans like this are going to shut that down.
Yeah. And look, we are playing catch up. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if I can give you the Auckland example, Auckland is expanding, building houses left, right and centre. We talked about that at the start. And the problem is that our town planners aren't that smart, and they don't build the roads and the infrastructure around those residential places. And then suddenly they figure out, we've got a whole lot more cars and people around. We need to widen motorways and all that. And if I say jury to people who live in Auckland, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This is the problem with social media as well. The cat is out of the bag. We're playing catch up. We're going to be playing catch up with AI as well. That's a whole topic in itself.
We're never going to catch up.
No.
100%.
And so the question is, okay, if a ban doesn't work, which, there are arguments for a ban not working, we have to have the debate. I'm just glad we're having the debate about how do we protect kids. We actually raised this issue back in 2014. I got a guy called Dr. Arik Sigmund from the UK to write a paper called Screen Time. And look, I was on One Breakfast and talking about the report. And look, they were quite dismissive of it because the report said that kids are spending too much time on the screen, more than the guidelines. And part of the problem was because screen time, there's a huge amount of screen time at schools, and then they go home and then there's a free time. And I mean, the guidelines say that kids under 2 shouldn't be on screens at all. I think it is under 2. And then it's only an hour or 2 a day for 2 to 5 or something like that. And look, I was sort of, I almost laughed out of the studio as though, look, what's the problem? I'm being unreasonable. Now, of course, everybody's worried about the effect of screen time, the effect it's having on kids, the lack of sleep, the dopamine hits and the addiction to it. So I'm glad we're having this honest discussion. I'm like you, Dane. I'm not quite sure of the absolute solution. And I also don't want to say, well, we've got to do something, because I don't think that's a good approach as well.
No, I really, really don't like it. It's like, well, at least they're doing something.
But I want big tech held accountable, and that's why I'm enjoying watching what's happening in the United States, because what in the courts, what they're having to do is prove harm, and they're persuading juries that there is harm, and then they're holding big tech to account. And you can already see big tech is squirming, and they're starting to introduce little features that they should have introduced from day one when parents were concerned. The other thing, Dane, I think just on this issue is that some people say, oh, look, it's just bad parenting, lack of parenting. I just find that a little bit hard to take because I think it's unfair. As a parent, and my kids are they're in their 20s now, but when they were in their teens, it was tough. You tried your best. You tried to put in the filters. I signed up with Safe Surfer, which was a great organization where I could have those filters, but that could only control when they're in the house for the sleep time and when they're home. I had no control over when they're outside. I tried to get apps that could block certain sites, but when I have problems with my phone, Dane, you know who I ask for help, eh? If my computer plays up, oh, hey, can you solve this problem? And so parents, I think, in fairness to parents, we've shortchanged them a little bit as well in just terms of support and help. And I've always wanted the government to do more in that area.
Let me just push back a little bit. When I was a kid, I was mad for horror films, and I would get my hands on like restricted material whenever I could, and I would watch it, and I would get seriously traumatized by some of these films. Or like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre absolutely threw me for six. I was just petrified for about 3 months, 6 months. Right? Now, you could argue that shouldn't have happened, but I'm a screenwriter. I'm writing 2 horrors now, for some directors. So it's like sometimes dodgy content can be the best thing for you. It can sort of help you find who you are and set you on a path. I do. This is a complexity that's hard that you could never legislate. It's quite philosophical, I guess. But I think if we're trying to clean it,
will you have an age restriction on your horror movie?
Well, by law, there will have to be an age restriction on the horror movie.
See, I think that's kind of what we're getting at, is that as a society, there are some restrictions we do put in place to protect children. Where that line is it 16 years old? Is it a ban or is it a restriction? And look, if your movie is so scary that you put an R16 on it, or parental guidance, kids are going to get around that. We know that, but we still do it because we know that's part of good society and protection of kids, isn't it?
But it can be an incentive for them to get, like I found like Clockwork Orange being R20. I was like, R20. Yeah. I got to see that. No, I got to see that. It can almost be, well, here's the wager. It's an R20. What are you going to do? Hey, look, in the last 10 minutes we've got, I wouldn't mind just having a little chat about the cannabis stuff, because
just before we do that, Dane, sorry to interrupt because I know you're the host, but I did a teaser at the beginning of the show and I haven't given the answer to that.
Okay, well, you do it.
Why the conversion therapy law should be overturned.
Okay.
The conversion therapy law should be overturned immediately because it's based on the fact that if you affirm a child to change their gender, that they believe they can change their sex, that they should go onto puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and then surgery at 18. And I've interviewed a young girl who, even at 14, when she was transitioning, her medical professionals were telling her, we'll get you ready for 18 and you can have your breasts cut off. That's in New Zealand. So there is this affirmation towards that, and that puberty blockers is the answer. They're fully reversible and they do no harm. And you have doctors like, Dame Sue Bagshaw saying puberty blockers are great. They give you the chance to think about it, but they don't. Basically, 99.9% of people who take puberty blockers then go on to the next step. The problem with the conversion therapy law is that if you say, actually, honey or son, just hold off on the puberty blockers, wait until your age when you understand what's going on with your body. When you're older, you can make the decision. That is a criminal offence under the conversion therapy law. Now, that was singing sort of in tune with what the Ministry of Health and PATHRA and all the radical activists were pushing, that puberty blockers is the answer. We're now at the point where the government has banned puberty blockers. So you're criminalised for saying, actually, son, you're a boy, or hey, honey, you're a girl, you can't change your sex. You're criminalised for that. But you also can't access puberty blockers anymore because we've finally acknowledged that the risk of puberty blockers and the effect of the risk is high and the effect of puberty blockers is low in terms of improving the situation. So you've got a complete contradiction there. And that's why this law should be immediately overturned, because it's actually fighting itself, because you're actually criminalising parents who follow the government directive. You think about that. You are criminalising parents for saying you can't go on puberty blockers, but the government has said you can't go on puberty blockers, we're going to ban them. See what I'm getting at?
The science has changed or was revealed, and because of that, it's made a nonsense of a law like this, and we'll probably end up just getting more science.
Yeah.
So but whether they overturn it again, it's like abortion. It's like if you tinker with it, all these parties want the center. All these parties want the center. So if you try tinkering with any of this stuff, people are going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. So that's a tough part of it.
Well, it was 113 to 8. 113 MPs voted for this.
Yeah,
including the ACT Party, taking away consent. Only 8 brave MPs, and I know those MPs were subject to vile threats, rape threats, and everything. It was a shocker. But look, that should be changed. So if I as part of our campaign, I'll be lobbying New Zealand First to say, hey, you've banned puberty blockers, so therefore the law is actually fighting itself. You need to repeal the law. And I'll also be lobbying ACT to say, you're a party of free will, free determination. Why have you taken away people seeking consensual counselling? And it goes totally against their supposed values. So we'll be campaigning to overturn this law. It's a harmful law, and it's a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist.
Okay, well, look, we've got 5 minutes. And I do want to talk about.
Let's talk about weed.
Yeah, let's talk about weed. I didn't plan this, but you did bring it up earlier, and I was, did I jump on? I think you did mention it. Yeah, it got mentioned.
Marijuana. That's right.
Yeah. Or maybe I did. I had one before we started. No, but so what I found, I personally feel I've got a few opinions on this law. I feel that Chloe Swarbrick has never really recovered. I think that she was on the rise before this campaign. It really knocked her bum in. We saw that she's not very gracious in defeat. But her arguments were rubbish. Now, I could have got it over the line by just saying, you're allowed to have 3 plants in your backyard. But that's it. That's my argument. You're allowed to have 3 plants in your backyard. It's a libertarian issue. Marijuana was always a libertarian issue. Her argument was state. We're going to have these dispensaries, and they're going to be outside of the, 500 kilometers out of the main street, or whatever it was. But it was just statist nonsense that just made people go, just let me have 3 plants in my backyard. All the other stuff just there was nothing sexy about it at all in terms of a campaign. So what was your counter argument? You were just going for the harms and medical evidence and so forth?
Well, basically, we were saying that when you're talking about marijuana these days, you're not talking about your parents' pot or your Woodstock weed. In effect, cannabis is a lot more potent. In those days, the THC levels were around 2 to 4%. Now you're averaging around, in fact, anything less than 15% is just junk weed. And then, of course, you get into the dabs and the oils, and I mean, you can get THC. I remember Patrick Gower did some research, and he went to Huntley, where this guy was growing these, like you say, growing these weeds in the back. Sorry, that's my Labrador. When's the walk, Dad? Is growing these weeds, plants in the back, and was getting it. They measured the THC. They took it to the testing place, and the THC was around, I think it was around the 80% mark. And I remember Andrew Little being blown away by that just the potency of it. So look, it's the harm of cannabis because it's far much stronger. It's not your little joint that you're referring to. By the way, if you grow 3 plants in your backyard, you're basically a drug dealer, because there's no way that you're going to be able to smoke or consume what those 3. If you're any good at growing weed, you're not going to be able to.
South Aucklanders, oh no, Bob.
And look, I would encourage anybody who thinks that legalizing weed is a good thing to just go to Colorado, California, or Vancouver, walk around, see the evidence, smell the air. I mean, I actually, in Colorado, I visited a place where there was a grow. So in other words, a place that marketed and grew all these plants. And it was next door to a couple of venues, including a church. And they said that if the wind was blowing off the grow on a Sunday morning when church was gathering, they couldn't gather because
they started speaking in tongues.
Exactly. And the smell was so pungent. Yeah, it was a holy high. In fact, I in Colorado, I
could feel the spirit.
I went to an outlet that was called a Holy High, and I met the 2 pastors who I think were actually drug dealers. But look, yeah, our warning was simply that the social harms were greater than the so-called benefits of having a high. And look, as you say, Chloe didn't put up good arguments. They felt they could regulate it. We were told that with big tobacco. We were told with big alcohol that they could regulate it. We know that there's, huge problems with abuse as well. So unfortunately, New Zealanders came on side despite the fact we were battling not only Chloe, but also the media.
Yeah. It's interesting, but it's quite instructive for me in terms of like campaigning. You ran a good campaign. I mean, I am sympathetic to someone having a little bit in the backyard. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal so much. I mean, I do take your point that it's got a lot stronger, and that is a concern. But her argument just was not sexy. Like, who would it? It's like, well, what are you talking about? No, it's like,
well, the interesting thing was that when we looked at the polling, and you can actually see this in the graphs, the average poll of polls, the yes vote was going to win by miles. And then when I came back from Vancouver and Colorado on the fact-finding mission, Q&A had me on with her, and we had a debate. And from that time, basically, that's when it swapped, because finally the media inadvertently had given us a chance to put up our argument. And this is the problem with a lot of these debates. For example, the conversion therapy debate, we led the charge on that as an organization. I mean, we got tens of thousands of submissions. So did the other side. I mean, it was more than 100,000 submissions on this bill. We got tens of thousands of submissions. Do you know how many media interviews I had in that whole debate?
How many?
None.
Yeah, it's not good.
One News did one thing from us, and they grabbed it off our website. They grabbed a YouTube clip that I'd produced. They couldn't even come and talk to us.
No.
And when we looked at the coverage, it was clearly in favour. So,
Venushi Walters just the other day, the Labour MP pushing back on the new NZ First bill of
hate.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's irresponsible. We're allowing the conversation to happen. I'm sorry. This is, but people need to have these conversations. I think the worst thing for genuine transgender people today has been the censorship.
Yeah.
It's as soon as you censor, people get suspicious about your ideas for a start. They go, well, why aren't they prepared to debate it? Yeah.
And the irony is that
I smell a rat. Yeah.
And in the LGBT, the T have tried to silence the LGB. That's been interesting to watch as well. Just can't even discuss it.
Well, the homosexual law reform bill was all debate. There was so much debate that happened at that time. Norm Jones and all these people. I mean, like he was a pretty strident, nasty character at times. But people fronted up and on both sides here and debated. Georgina Beyer would debate. When Georgina was healthier, obviously. It's a shame what happened and her withdrawal. But she was
went to school. Interestingly, I went to school with George Beyer.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Papatui, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. George was 2 years ahead of me at Puberty High. Yeah. So
that's interesting.
Bit of history.
Bit of history, yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
No, it's. I think shutting down debate only harms. You know, people think, well, if we shut down the debate, it's going to help our side. In the short term, maybe, but I think a lot of, you know, you're just growing resentment. You know, let it all out. You know, have that debate. It's the way to sort of deal with polarization. Really, you know, people have to be able to voice their views. We can't be selectively silencing, platforming, silencing. Yeah, it hasn't worked, but they still want to do it.
Either they shut down the debate or they label. So they, you know, start saying, you know, it's far right, or right now is a new term apparently, or, you know, they call it Trumpian, or any negative connotation that they can give it. And I just encourage people, look, the labels are not because they're true or valid. The labels are designed to shut you up, because we don't like the labels. Don't shut up. You need to keep on speaking up. You know, it's water off a duck's back. And as I say, the Labor Party knows all about ducks, apparently. So
that's right. Well, that's a great gag to end on, Bob.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, thank you, Bob. It's been good. We've gone it for over an hour. And you know, maybe I should bring you back on a panel sometime or something like that, and we can keep, you know, having these discussions. And
absolutely. And I love the work of the Free Speech Union. I remember, I think I did a little promo quite a few years ago now when we were opposing hate speech laws, etc.
Matt McCartan was a part of that.
Yes, Matt McCartan, and once again, it was the locking of arms of people on both sides of the aisle.
That's right.
Which is the same with the debate around the definition of man and woman. I mean, I'm locking arms. In fact, the Disinformation Project was most upset that Annie O'Brien was locking arms with a Christian fundamentalist at Family First. I took it as a compliment, that the fact that we were big enough and grown up enough to agree to disagree on some things, but come together and work together on those things that united us. And
you discover that people that you thought you wouldn't agree with actually are quite nice people.
Yeah, I think you're quite nice now, Dane, after all those terrible things I thought.
Well, I told you, stop listening to Bohan Dutta. He's not a reliable source.
Thank you for listening to Free to Speak. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider sharing the podcast with others. We release new episodes regularly, and subscribing is the easiest way to stay up to date. If you have any questions, feedback or suggestions, you can contact us at podcast@fsu.nz. If you want to find out more about the New Zealand Free Speech Union, visit fsu.nz.